This experience is the reason I only stay in hotels. It was last winter, and I was traveling to visit some family for the holidays. I decided to book through Airbnb since it seemed much more convenient and cheaper than booking a hotel. I found a listing for a small 2-bedroom home just a few minutes from my parents' place. I would be spending most of the trip with my parents, so I basically needed a place to sleep and didn't care for aesthetics all that much. Regardless, the place seemed clean and the listing was brand new, so I decided to book it. Check-in was super easy. There was a lockbox on the front door that contained the key, and the code to the lockbox was given to me from the Airbnb host through the app. One thing that struck me as odd was that the garage was off limits. This wasn't an issue for me. I didn't plan on renting or using a vehicle during my visit, and I figured that the owner just wanted to keep the garage off limits to avoid any unnecessary damages or something of the sort. When I arrived, the place was nicer than I expected. It was very clean and neatly decorated, and smelled very strongly of cleaning solution. I was quite pleased with the place. Fast forward a few days, my parents were hosting a dinner party on Christmas Eve, and the whole family got together for some drinks and fun. It was a great time. The night ended around 1 a.m. A sober family friend agreed to drive me home, since it wasn't very far out of the way. And I made it home feeling very tired and drunk. As I got myself ready for bed, I realized that I misplaced my phone. I entered rooms aimlessly looking for it, and that's when I accidentally opened the door that led to the garage. And my curiosity got the best of me. I peered inside and was shocked at what I saw. The garage was full of disturbing things. There were rusty-looking handcuffs, large knives, and chainsaws laying around. The place was a mess. It also had a very strong and disgusting smell. It felt so out of place in this clean and beautifully decorated Airbnb. The whole site freaked me out. I sped up in looking for my phone, and when I finally found it, I packed up and instantly called an Uber to a hotel. I messaged the host about it, and a few days later I found that the listing had been taken down. This entire experience was shocking. Whether it was some weird hobby or something worse than that, I'm unsure. But what I can say is that it was not normal. Always be aware of the places you're staying. Creeps are everywhere, and you may find yourself staying in their homes. For context, I'm a young female in my early 20s. My friends and I decided to plan a trip this summer to Miami. It would all be our first time ever visiting, so we were all excited. We looked for a place on Airbnb and found a beautiful condo overlooking the water in downtown Miami. When we got there, the host met us directly in the lobby and helped us up to the unit. Initially, we thought this was very nice of the host. He was a middle-aged man who claimed to also be living in the building. He told us to contact him if we needed anything, and left us with the key fob for our unit. We were all tired at this point after a long flight, so we planned to just order some food and relax for the night. We didn't even bother unpacking most of our belongings. We browsed for a bit and decided to order some sushi. When the sushi arrived, my friend Sasha went to the door to grab the food. When she did, she saw our Airbnb host entering the unit directly next to ours. She came back and told us that he was staying right beside us. We were evidently creeped out by this, but rationalized that he likely chose to live in a unit next to the Airbnb to monitor sound levels and make sure we weren't throwing parties. Or maybe it was so that he could be there in case the Airbnb guests needed anything. Regardless, we decided to check the place out as we were beginning to feel unnerved. We thought there might be hidden cameras around. I investigated the bathroom, which was on the side of the condo connected to his, to see if I could find anything suspicious. I looked in the wall sockets and small decor, trying to find if there were any hidden cameras. That's when I moved over a tall garbage can that was beside the toilet, and there it was. A hole in the wall that led from his place into ours. The hole was directly facing the shower so that he could easily spy on anyone without them knowing. I looked into the hole and saw a man staring back at me. I screamed and ran out of there. We grabbed all of our things and left immediately. Luckily, the man didn't follow us. We reported the incident to Airbnb, and the man's account was suspended for obvious reasons. We even got the police involved, so hopefully the man faces some charges. My friends and I are always super cautious when renting Airbnbs now. I never rent a place unless it has hundreds of reviews, and I always make sure to check for peepholes or hidden cameras. Be safe. I was traveling solo across the state for a job interview that I had. The job in question was a 6-hour drive from my current home, so I would have to spend a night or two away to take the interview. I decided to rent a small Airbnb that was only a 5-minute walk from the interview location. I figured it would be very convenient to stay close by, and that way I wouldn't have to worry about traffic making me late on the day of the interview. I was mostly just concerned with how close the Airbnb was to the interview site that I failed to look at the reviews or quality. Big mistake on my part. I drove the 6 hours, and when it was finally time to check in, I was exhausted. I was looking forward to just settling in and having an early night so I could be well rested for the interview the next day. Unfortunately, that didn't end up happening. When I pulled into the driveway, I noticed that another vehicle was parked there. It was still pretty early, so I figured it was the cleaning crew just running a bit behind schedule. That's when I checked my messages. I realized that I hadn't been given any check-in instructions. I messaged the host asking for information on how to check in. They replied instantly. All they said was, "Come on in," with a smiley face. Weird, I thought. I almost never interacted with the hosts when I rented Airbnbs in the past. I got out of my car, grabbed my suitcase, and made my way to the door. Before I even got a chance to knock, the front door swung open. A man stood there with a big smile on his face. He introduced himself as Dan, the host of the Airbnb. I asked what he was doing there, and he just gave me some vague answer on how he was finishing up some things. He was very talkative, which was not something I was in the mood for after a 6-hour drive. He helped me carry my luggage inside and showed me around the place. It was much bigger than I remembered it to be from the pictures. It had to be 4 rooms in total, which was a lot. He recommended that I stay in the master bedroom, which I obviously agreed with. The master bedroom was huge, and it had its own private bathroom attached. Dan kept making small talk for 20 more minutes, and I was starting to get annoyed. I politely asked him to leave so I could get some rest, and he apologized and left. A wave of relief swept over me as the door shut, and the place was finally quiet. I ate some of the food that I had brought with me, and then laid in bed, scrolling on my phone for a while. It was 9 p.m. at this point. That's when I realized I hadn't been given any key to the place. I figured he might have left the key on the counter without me realizing, so I got up to look around for it. I exited my bedroom and turned on the lights. As I did, I saw Dan standing in the living room. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Just giving you the key," he responded, placing the key on the living room table. He looked startled and hurried out of the house. I locked the door behind him and made sure all of the windows were locked too. His car wasn't in the driveway, so I have no clue how he had gotten here. I knew that he didn't expect to be caught lurking around and made up that excuse about the keys out of nowhere. I was terrified at the thought of him coming in again at night, but it was too late to find another place to stay. I decided to lock up the place as best I could. I propped a chair in front of the door to stop him from getting in case he had a spare key, and I also pushed a dresser in front of the bedroom door. It took me a while, but eventually I was able to fall asleep. It wasn't until about 3 a.m. that I woke up to the sound of the front door. The man was clearly trying to break in and was struggling with the chair. I yelled out, "I'm calling the police," and the sound stopped. I dialed 911 and waited for the police to arrive. Luckily, it only took them about 5 minutes to get here. When they did, there was no sign of the man, but luckily they took me very seriously. They got me a hotel to stay at for the rest of the night, and arrested the guy a few days later. It was safe to say that his Airbnb account was also terminated. The man never said what his intentions were, but I'm sure they weren't good. I was very tired and stressed out the next morning for obvious reasons, but luckily I nailed the job interview and got hired on the spot. I'm still very freaked out by the whole thing, but at least the man was caught by the police and isn't terrorizing Airbnb guests any longer.